What a shocker that the people who see everything through the lens of race and sex see their election loss as a result of racism and sexism.
I believe that racism and misogyny, they're just alive and well.
But that's not, it doesn't say, I voted for Donald Trump because of racism. That's not what what stat are you talking about?
The View erupted into chaos when Bill Maher dropped a brutal truth bomb that rattled the panel. Whoopi Goldberg had to step in before things spiraled completely out of control, as Sunny Houston, unwavering in her positions, clashed fiercely with her co-hosts. Tensions were at a fever pitch, and the show seemed desperate to rewrite the narrative after an electoral setback, with an air of urgency hanging over every word. Maher's blunt critique ignited the conversation, calling out the left's fixation on identity politics and their reluctance to acknowledge internal shortcomings. As the debate escalated, the atmosphere grew almost unbearable. Was this only the start of a more intense showdown, or would anyone back down?
Okay, and finally, new rule. Someone must tell the usual suspects on the far left that the saying is, when you're in a hole, stop digging, not keep digging. Talk about doubling down on what got you fucked in the first place. Even the one concession I've heard a few people on the losing side offer, that liberals should stop saying that Trump voters are stupid, comes with a kind of unspoken parentheses. We know they are stupid, just don't say it. Yeah, I got bad news for you. They don't have a monopoly on stupid. They just want prices to go down and good jobs and the police when you call them.
Well, if he's right, then why didn't people vote for the former prosecutor who actually had policy plans to help the working class? I mean, again, I got my popcorn. I don't know why people did what they did. I see all these reasons, and so, okay, time will tell. But what do y'all think?
Who is using it as a weapon? It's amazing how inconsistent they are. Please make it make sense. Let's be honest, Whoopi never implemented Kamala Harris's idea in her capacity as vice president, even if I were to give her the benefit of the doubt. Similar to this, Joe Biden makes a lot of promises but doesn't really follow through on them. Why should anyone give leaders who have the capacity to improve things but have failed to do so another chance? That is the real question.
I know that as a country, it's very difficult for people to believe that racism and misogyny, they're just alive and well. I think that we don't want to think that about ourselves, our neighbors, our friends. But it's my lived experience tells me that it does still exist, even if your lived experience doesn't tell you that it exists. And, the facts support that. I think we have a graph. If you look at there's a clear racial divide in who voted for Trump as opposed to who voted for Kamala Harris. It's very clear. It's not only clear by race, but it's also clear by education. And so the notion somehow that is not true. This is by education. Those who attended college voted for her at a higher degree than those that didn't. And I've said that. Let me just finish. And so I've said that before, and there was so much backlash because I think it's an uncomfortable inconvenience.
Let's be clear, it's not an unpleasant reality, but rather a weak argument that crumbles under scrutiny. Classifying voters based on their race or educational attainment does not necessarily explain election outcomes. Look at the numbers. In 2020, Joe Biden beat Kamala Harris, proving that results, reputation, and leadership are more significant than identity. The election's outcome was ultimately driven by voters' demand for workable solutions during a crisis. And any narrative that ignores this will ultimately fall apart.
They felt like, I think the biggest common denominator in this election is people want a good life and ability to provide for their family. And whether we agree or not with Donald Trump's plans, they thought that he was reflective.
One of the poorest demographics in this country, but they voted for Kamala Harris.
But there was a split, and more of them voted for Donald Trump than had historically. I think that there's such a desire. If you really think the vast majority of this country voted because of racism and misogyny, you're missing it. Most of my family, a lot of my family doesn't have college degrees.
But the stats are the stats.
But that's not, it doesn't say I'm white, I voted for Donald Trump because of racism. That's not what stat. What stat are you talking about?
Let me just dissect the
Yes, you can.
Hold on. Calm down. Everybody just take a breath.
No matter how many times the election results are replayed, it feels like an endless loop of the same arguments. Sunny Houston insists that sexism and misogyny are the only culprits, but she isn't interested in a real discussion. She's only there to restate her stance. Reasoned explanations and facts seem to bounce right off her. For anyone willing to look at the situation logically, it's clear that immigration and the economy were the issues that truly mattered. The Democrats didn't lose because of a major social bias. They stumbled because they misread their voters' priorities, ignored warning signs, and ultimately faced the consequences. While narratives can shape elections, action is what wins them. And that's precisely where they fell short.
That folks see everything through the lens of racism and sexism. Not everything. But if you're not seeing racism and sexism in America, then you need to clean your lenses.
Yeah.
Because, this is something that I also find interesting, that when Democrats and liberals talk about race or sexism, it's immediately labeled as identity politics, which has a negative connotation. It's a term that Republicans have coined, and it's been very effective. But when Donald Trump goes to Miami and talks to Cubans, that's not identity politics. When Donald Trump goes to Dearborn, Michigan and promises Arabs something, that's not identity politics. When he goes to Jews and promises them the opposite.
Republicans focus on direct outreach rather than chasing a woke agenda, which makes their connections with voters feel genuine. Meanwhile, her inconsistencies and association with a struggling administration made her an easy target for criticism. Rather than pointing fingers outward, the Democratic Party needs to take a hard look at itself. The shift toward progressive policies has left even centrist Democrats puzzled, alienating voters and obscuring the issues people actually care about. Until the party confronts this reality,
guardianship. Okay, and that's where the guardianship happened. And I didn't mind it at that time at all, because it's about my money and keeping my money safe. You understand what I'm saying? But at this point in my life, I want to terminate guardianship and move on with my life, if that's possible at all.
And so because it was a voluntary guardianship in the beginning, it was fine because Wendy wanted to get some discussion with her finances and get things together. What ended up happening was Wendy didn't realize that this person was going to take her whole entire life. She just thought someone was just going to come and protect her.
Exactly. And
what happened was
played really nice to me. Everybody played really nice. Next thing you know, from New York, I'm in Connecticut, and the entire building is memory unit. And it was the worst of all. It was worse than where I am in New York. It was horrible.
Electoral setbacks and weak responses will keep repeating. Take, for example, the reaction to Bill Maher's comments, especially from The View. Outright dismissal of constructive criticism only deepens the divide and makes meaningful change harder to achieve. What do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoyed this article, don't forget to like, subscribe, and check back for more. Thanks for watching.